Meow, meow, meow. I already know it's working because we've been recording, but I have to start over because now we're on completely different terms of service. Warning, the following program is recorded live for YouTube and is not intended for children. This program may at any time contain graphic or disturbing content, harsh and abusive language, violence, well, I guess not nudity, I guess also not hate speech, undiagnosed mental illness, and other triggering subjects that may be distressing for some viewers and against the terms of service for most mainstream websites. The themes and opinions expressed in this program should be considered a psychotic disinformation campaign and should not be used for political or academic purposes. Facts are not checked, and no sources or citations will be provided. Should you choose to redistribute this broadcast, please do so only in good faith. Thank you again for joining us. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome back to the Park Bench of Rainbows and Razor Blades, a show from the void. By the Gregorian calendar, it is currently the third day in the 12th month, the month of December, in the year of the Lord, 2022. By the revolutionary calendar that sought to decimalize the clock in France in, I think, 1792 or 1791, whenever the Jacobins were like, oh, let's fucking overthrow the government. Let's have a fucking radical regime change. Let's decimalize every fucking thing. But it is the 13th day of Frimaire, which means that it would be the 73rd day of the solar year. Thanks for joining. On today's episode, I'm just stim rocking because I don't really know what to talk about because like it's not content I'm used to producing. I oh boy, is it not what I am used to producing. Hold on, I need to take this shirt off because I'll show you what I'm used to producing. What? An undershirt? Bet you weren't expecting that. Um, Not everyone is entitled to an exception to all of their disabilities. So like I truly believe in my heart of hearts and my soul of my soul that it's not hate speech against autistic people. It's not necessarily really like animal abuse, but it's something on those lines that it's a term of service thing that I can't go without a shirt, right? Like, okay, all right, I understand that if I was doing sacred yoga and worship, that I could wear probably no shirt on even on YouTube. And I'm not suggesting that I'm gonna go do this. I'm not whack-a-mole content, so to speak. I am something that is transcendental to the properties of the universe. And the fact that I'm able to just put myself on the internet, I'm not really seeking anything from YouTube, if that makes sense. Like I exist already in private and quiet distribution to an audience that I don't really want to talk about. There's a sacred vow between the non-electronic world and the electronic world. So hello to the electronic world. If I could wear no shirt, I would. If I could have candles in this place with the electricity, I would. But I cannot. Well, it's not against terms of service to have a candle. It's a fire hazard. it's it's against the terms of service of my lease. Those damned millennials walking around like they rent the place. Who do they think they are? So, I mean, there's so many topics. Like, that's the thing. Like, this is why I jumped over to YouTube because, like, I got sick of just brimstone and bigotry sermoning, right? And I wanted to come out to the world as, like, hi. First of all, I exist. Second of all, hi. Like, but it's like the type of hi that, like, Heath Ledger nails it. And it's funny because people, when that movie came out, when The Dark Knight came out, people were like, oh my God, Priestess, Sarah, that reminds me so much of you. You're like the Joker. And I was like, shut the fuck up. I'm not Heath Ledger. Shut the fuck up. No one ever compared me back then to like Catwoman. Well, that movie hadn't come out yet, but they weren't comparing me to like Halle Berry's version of like the Catwoman, right? No, because that's who I'd be, right? That's the sleazy type of kinky, I'm sneaking in your fucking window, stealing your girlfriend type of vibe that I want to get away with the family jewels. Like, fuck you, I'm the Catwoman, right? But no, it's all like, oh, Sarah, you remind me of Heath Ledger, the Joker. And I get it, I do, I understand why, because the themes are almost identical. Like even at that maniacal fucking age, I had like this sense of like megalomania. Is that the word? Like megalomaniacal, whatever the word is. Like I had a real sense of the dark triad, and I wasn't the type where I was like, I'm gonna go be a fucking school shooter, or the type where I was like, I'm gonna kidnap and fucking sexually assault people. Like it had nothing to do with those types, but it had a lot to do with like you either become a cop and a prosecutor or you become the criminal, right? And I always was like that, right? And that was kind of the theme of that whole movie, right? It was like Two-Face and the Joker versus, you know, like good and justice versus darkness and light. Was that Michael Bay? Who the fuck made that movie? It wasn't Michael Bay. There was not enough explosions. Who was it? It was the dude who made Inception. I forget his name. It doesn't matter right now. But The Dark Knight. We're talking about The Dark Knight. And I remember when the movie came out, it was one of my favorite movies, like immediately. And like I swear, I went into that movie like trying like an edgelord to hate it. The same way that like when I went into Twilight, I went in with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, I tried so hard to like that movie. I tried so hard to just be into that movie, and I was just like, this is disgusting. The fact that they made this has done irreparable harm to the genre of person that is created by following this drivel. I had the same reaction to that as that women, Christian specifically women, had to Magic the Gathering cards, putting the devil into their children's hands, right? Like I had the same thought about Twilight. I was like, this is just degenerating America's youth. Like this is the worst type of thing. this is really bad, man. Like we need to do something about this. Like your free speech is out the window. You're not allowed to watch Twilight. Like it was that bad, dude. And it wasn't. I think it was probably around the same time where I lost faith in television because of the 6th season of Lost. I was like, this show, like, listen, I understand why they had to purposefully tactical nuke the show. What's it called? What it was called? The Man in the High Tower. Right? Okay, about like what if Hitler won the war, and then like ooh, it's a bunch of people in like post World War II sort of era. But like they're Nazis. Oh no. And like, yo, it was mad fucking good for one season, but the problem is that one of the characters, unfortunately probably the strongest actor and actually the most compelling story, was a Nazi. And people, I think this is a total conspiracy theory. I have no proof of this. My best guess is that the CIA's modern version of Project Mockingbird saw what was happening with the hero worship and the imagery and the iconography or whatever the word is of the Nazi regime, and people were like getting off to it, so they put a stop to it, and they were like, we can't make this show, we have to destroy this show, basically. So they started introducing like all sorts of nonsense. I mean, it was always nonsense, but I mean, like by the time that show ended, I literally can't even remember what the fuck happened. Like I truly don't remember what the fuck was going on in that show, and I think that was the point, right? That's a total conspiracy theory. I have zero proof that happened. That's just a story that I like to tell. Like, it just seems like it, you know? Like, and I'll give you a better example, right? Transformers. Oh my god, I was in love with Megan Fox. Who wasn't? I was like, get this guy away from my girlfriend. Like, I will take you and the car. Yes, sir. But you could go away. Like, me and Bumblebee are gonna have our way with Megan Fox. Like, that was, I mean, and they sold it that way too. Like, you can't shame me. You cannot shame me, a straight man, for looking at Megan Fox and thinking like, damn, like, shut up. You can talk shit about Michael Bay, about how he shouldn't fetishize. I don't know how she was or how old she was at the time, but I know that she was, I cannot, how old was with Megan Fox? She had to have been 18. She had to have been 18, right? Surely my culture would not have degenerated so far as to draw the line arbitrarily. Well, okay, that's a dangerous argument to use the word arbitrary, but to put the line lower, how dare they? How old was Megan Fox in Transformers? It auto-completed that for me. Okay, she was 21 years old, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, because, I mean, she looked like she was 21. She did not look like she was not 21. She looked like they presented her, I think, as a high schooler. Is that correct? I think that's correct, because like Sam Wikipedia would boom, jump out the fucking window, bah, 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 boom, 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 but then like the girlfriend, and I was like, the girlfriend, right? Like, it was embarrassing how overtly sexual appeal was flaunted as kind of like and it wouldn't be so bad if it was just that. It was the fact that the entire series became the backbone structure almost of the image of the modern military, right? Like Transformers, next generation warfare propaganda funded literally by the Pentagon. Unironically, like not as a conspiracy theory, as like foundational upon what Hollywood is or is not allowed to portray in its mainstream movies. For lack of a better term, I don't know what they call it, but like I know for a solidified, provable fact, like they don't hide it. It's not even classified information, right? It's just like there is a branch of the military who their entire job, day in, day out, is to just approve or disapprove of media and to fund more than it's to approve or disapprove, it's or to undermine the enemy. That's not even what it's about. It's not even about the subversion tactics anymore. It's about funding and creating the image thereof, right? Like Megan Fox is a distraction from the fact that you're actually getting indoctrinated with like hero worship in a way that Jarhead throws out the window, right? Like go watch fucking Jarhead and you tell me if you come away from that being like, yay, the military's here. Like hell no, dude, because that it's kind of like you can't watch what the fuck is that movie where it's like the horror. I can never remember the name of that, but there's a couple of them of that era, like the post-Vietnam brutality films. They even what the hell is its name? With Forrest Gump, like the familial friendly Tom fucking Hanks movie. You know what I'm talking about? Run, Forrest, run! Right? I probably shouldn't do that because it's making fun of Southern accents, but that may be construed as racism. You never know these days. Like, people will accuse you of fucking anything. Like, we have entered a new era where instead of, like, military hero worship, we have kind of the opposite with, like, whatever the hell that everyone is talking about with Disney, doing whatever the hell it is that Disney did with the purple hair woman. We all know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm not going to go off on the tangent, but, like, if you're going to create a powerful character, it can't be a right-wing portrayal of us in strength. Like, it's kind of like showing the Indian warrior and like you know what I mean? Like, all right, let's take Native Americans as an example, right? It's like showing them in a sense of strength and civility, like, the disciplined, but the portrayal itself is still racism because the artwork, what it's depicting, what they showed me in school and in the textbooks is something to the effect of like, look how dignified they were when they traded us the beads. The myth that these people were uncivilized, throw that out the window. We teach progressivism here. We don't want to talk about how the fact that there were like racial sentiments that thought of them as animals on the land. We don't want to talk about the fact that like colonial forces dominated this area in the roots of our legal structure today. No. We had a revolution, the Revolutionary War, and everything changed after that. And then when the Indians did happily trade us for beads, look how happy they are. Look how happy they are in these textbooks. Look how dignified they are when we draw fucking Pocahontas, right? Disneyfied. Disney controls the perception, right, of the people who watch Disney. I mean, like, even still today, like, not nearly, I don't think, as much. It may be more influence. It's hard to tell because like they're definitely less overtly racist, as like they're not putting out, you know, blackface stuff like they were like a literal probably century ago, you know. But the crap they are promoting now, it's like putting up a glass ceiling. Like, this is the best we're going to do for you. Fuck you. This is the best character we're going to create for you fucking leftists. And, like, I get it. I understand why that is. But I wonder if that's the same or similar mechanism to whoever is putting the military worship. It isn't necessarily jackboot thuggery. It's not the same. But the military hero notion worship into our media, right? Because where was that movie shilled the hardest? In our homelands, where we get our soldiers from, right? A little bit further south. It had a bit of a twang to it at times, right? It hit pitch perfect, right? Racial solidarity, the black soldier who, I think it was the dude from Fast and the Furious 2. That dude's a badass, whoever he is. Great actor. And then the other dude who's just like Giga fucking Chad. I don't know his name either because I don't give a shit about either of these people, but you know, they were great. What an absolutely amazing movie. But like, they had these scenes in it where, like, I get it, we're showing off machinery, but it was such a fucking dick ride to the military that like it made me uncomfortable. And as the movies went on and the characters became less closely associated with a hometown kid plot and it became more about the hero worship itself and just like the immortality myth, right? Of like this is like it was like Greek mythology. It had the same kind of vibe, and it was of the same kind of era as all those like action movies with the Greeks, right? What was with that? Like the like mystifying psychotic dream state that was the movie 300. Like what was that? What was that experience as a movie? Like as a filmmaker, like what did that movie really accomplish? It was very bizarre. It was not historically accurate. It didn't pretend to be historically accurate. It was very bizarre. Very, very bizarre. I still can't figure that one out, man. Gerard Butler, though, what a fucking dude. Have you guys seen the movie? Let me think for a moment. I can't remember his name. I also just need to eat and take a break. Welcome back to Rainbows and Razor Blades. Today we're talking about like movies and stuff, I guess. We were just kind of going off. Like it's what I do. Like it's not supposed to have. It's just supposed to look like this or like this on the side. It's just like depending on my mood, that's what you're gonna get. Things are gonna blend into each other. Sometimes they're gonna associate. Sometimes they're gonna rhyme scheme. We have a lot of fun on this show. I want a live audience. That's what brings me to YouTube. I was talking a little bit about like where did this come from? Like am I just randomly showing up? Like is this episode 1? Like no. No, far from it. Far from episode 1. Like you're joining me 3 years into a project, you know what I mean? Like you're joining me this project is approaching about 2 full years old. But the projects that preceded this go back about like even further than that, like 3 years before that. And then I think that was about the year I started like recording and like realizing like I could have a vlog and like realizing that like there was no reason not to have a video diary. Like there was no conceivable excuse why that I didn't have that. Oh, I have a fucking cold sore, right? Exactly where you'd expect a fucking cold sore. Hold on. Gotta look at this. What a fucking mess. Oh, I can't see shit. I can't see fucking shit on here. Hold on. Sorry, I shouldn't have come back, but like I just felt like, like I'm trying to like record, but I'm still like busy a little bit. Well, I can't see anything wrong with it. I hope that doesn't mean, or I hope that means that I'm not. Or I hope that doesn't mean I'm getting sick. People lurking about. Sometimes they just like come into my room because my room is split into two because I share a room with a fucking laundry room. So sometimes people just kind of let themselves into the laundry room, even though there's signs that's like don't fucking come in the laundry room. But like you never know. Oh, it's a little sus, but it is what it is. No one was in there. It's just maybe the house settling or someone moving around downstairs or something. Today she is 36 years old. We're still looking at Megan Fox, I guess. Fox said she was 19 or 20 at the time and had to pretend to work on one of Michael Ferrari's. Yeah, I mean, she clearly didn't know anything about the car, but like, who cares? Like, girl who can fix a car and is hot? Wow, what a fetish. What a fetish. That was a fetish back then. Like, cars were like a real fetishized thing back then. It was interesting because they were trying to sell it mostly to the like fuckboy 22 to 30-year-olds, I suppose. But like the real fuckboys. Like, this was back in like the era when Too Fast, Too Furious was coming out, and like every single thing was just like, oh, fast cars, oh, engines, oh, lowriders, like, oh, body kits, oh, Fast and the Furious game, oh, Need for Speed, oh, unlock the skins in Need for Speed, oh, look at this one, wow, Burnout 3, great. I shouldn't talk shit about Burnout 3. Fucking Grand Theft Auto. Like, everyone was glamorizing auto theft and like auto racing and like auto industry. And like, I look at that and I think to myself, like, why weren't we worshiping walkable cities? Like, why weren't we watching movies like Midsummer back then? They hadn't been made yet. Not to say that Midsummer is a folk tale about non-drivable cities, but man, I think that's it's like, if you want to look at what people say that they want when you ask them, they want Midsummer. That's what they want. That is what they want. They say it too. Like, you ask them and they're like, oh, I just like don't want to work. I just want walkable cities. I want community gardening. I want to return to the earth. I want to be able to walk barefoot on grass, not pavement, and blood, drugs, and sex on the beaches with needles. Take a lit cigarette, burn you down under steeples. I think we already did that one today. But you get what I mean, you know? Yeah, that's what they want, man. They want they don't want the like middle of the fucking South African jungle talking about, oh, I'm the Messiah, oh, World War III, oh, doomsday. By the way, the senator showed up and found out that we shot his people, and yeah, he's pretty pissed, so we're gonna have to kill all of you now with some Kool-Aid. And if you don't drink the Kool-Aid, we're gonna inject you with whatever fucking that we are gonna inject you and kill you with. It's fucked up, bro. That's Jonestown, for those who don't know. That's not what people want. What people want is Midsummer. They want that type of community living. Whether they want to worship the Bible or a book or not, and have like holy rooms that are off limits or not, I guess it depends on the person. I think what's interesting about that movie is like it kind of just like shows, even if it's not really like historically accurate or like realistic, it shows at least some form of like difference from the normal type of movie. Like the quintessential normal type of movie is actually, it's not a good movie, but it's Russell Crowe, and it's literally the name, I forget the name, but I think it's called, it's not Rampage, like Revenge or something simple, and like Whack Job or something like that. Like, you like basically POV, you're a woman, but you've pissed off the wrong guy because you beeped at him, and that's it. Now he's a fucking, like, serial killer. He's going to come after everything you love, and he's going to run you over in his fucking pickup truck. He's going to run you off the road. He's going to kidnap your family. He's going to kill your fucking boyfriend. I'm serious, too. Like, he's going to do all this stuff. He's going to show up at your house. He's going to fist fight you, try to stab you, kill you, fucking try to do all this different stuff because he's just having a bad day. Like, he's just, like, you fucked with the wrong guy. That's a horror movie, right? Very, very different than, like, the paranormal, even. Because we had the same director of Midsummer make Hereditary, which was like a really, really weird movie, dude. One of the most terrifying movies. Like, it's just like striking gore horror combined with like psychological mental illness, mindfuck, cult paranoia combined with paranormal activity. Like, what the fuck, bro? Like, there's a scene where the bitch teleports behind you. You're like, fuck, dude, she teleports. Or, like, can, like, do, like, the zero gravity fucking, like, demon fucking thing that we're all, we've sleep paralysis, whatever. Whatever, wherever it comes from in our soul, we know it when we see it. We're like, oh shit, bro. You know, there's another good one is Smile recently did the thing where the head drops, but there was that movie was terrible. Shit, what was the movie? It was also terrible. That's why I can't recall the name. But it had this dude, and he was like the bad guy from Lost season 4, I think. And maybe the guy from Burn Notice, but I may just be misremembering his face. I may be wrong. It may not be him, but it actually probably isn't him. It's maybe a guy who looks nothing like him. But what the hell is the name of this damn movie? Like an angel comes down, whoosh, and then in the desert, and then it's like one cafe, and then a horde of legions of demons, and they're like trying to break in. And Gabriel, I think it's the angel, has like a sword and like fucks them all up. But like it's like very like there's like machine guns. It's very bizarre. It's kind of like a video game in a way. It's surreal. It's a very strange, like, CGI was just making these movies possible in a way that, like, Bollywood today goes crazy with. And so we had these, like, C-rank movies getting made with, like, budgets. And it was a very strange time for cinema. And I don't think we'll ever return to that. Like, I think it was, like, growing pains more than anything. It's just like, oh, boy, this is really bad. And, like, you knew it was really bad even back then because, like, Avatar, like, the first one, not the second one that they're shilling. Is it shilling or is it advertising? Like, is it part of the zeitgeist enough that we all hold it beloved like Hayao Miyazaki? Like, even in America, like, that's, like, a global phenomena. Like, people love that shit. Like, when that comes back to theaters, like, every single year, people love that shit. The people who watch that in English, I'm not allowed to say what my thoughts are on YouTube. It'd be considered hate speech. But, like, you gotta check yourself. You gotta fucking check yourself. If you're watching anime in English, what are you really doing? Like, I understand some of you have disabilities and that you need the subtitles, even if it's watched in English, and that you prefer it in English so you can follow the plot. But you're missing the cultural richness of it by such a wide margin that what makes anime beautiful and distinct cannot be done in English. Maybe the only exception to that is Hayao Miyazaki films, because they are quintessential, like, spiritual archetypes. Like, they're perfectly represented. Like the little soot sprites, like they give her shoes back. Do you have any idea how endearing that is? They made the shoes into a character. Where do you get that other than in like old school Pinocchio? You can go watch ex Professor X Daddy Dr. Jordan Peterson. You can go watch him talk about this in 2017. Go watch his like lecture series. It's on whatever fucking try on his own YouTube. You can go watch his 2017 lecture series about like when he was a professor, like an actual professor, and he was teaching kids. He was teaching like actual, instead of like whatever, I don't know what he's doing now, but whatever he was doing even 3 years ago with the I'm only eating meat and I'm going to only talk about the Bible. I don't know, man. Weird fucking time to be that guy, I suppose. Like, I wonder, like, what kind of thoughts goes on in that dude's head? Like, if we were to give that dude a shit ton of psychedelics, like, all the time, would he be Terrence McKenna? Like, probably not. I think it'd be an interesting thought experiment, though. Like, where would Jordan Peterson be if he was just, like, full send on the left? Like, instead of being a conservative, he was just, like, and the mushroom. Not to accuse Terrence McKenna of being on the left, but the psychedelic mushrooms. The wee totos. Just like, what is this dude talking about? That dude babbles. Terrence McKenna. That dude babbles. Hold on. He babbles the way that I do, but at 190 IQ. I'm at like 110 IQ, like not even one standard deviation full above where the bell curve starts to go back down. Like, I'm definitely on the right side of it. Here, I'll read you some words by the great Terrence McKenna. He was an ethnobotanist and psychonaut, which means he explored his mind using psychedelic drugs, and he was very open about it. What civilization is 6 billion people trying to make themselves happy by standing on each other's shoulders and kicking each other's teeth in. It's not a pleasant situation. We tend to disempower ourselves. We tend to believe that we don't matter. And in the act of taking that idea to ourselves, we give everything away to somebody else, to something else. That's actually really wise. taking that idea to ourselves. This is just like what it looks like if you were like wondering, like what I'm reading. I'm reading like inspirational quotes. Someone gave this to me because they're like, "Oh, I have an autism book for you." I was like, "A what?" They're like, "An autism book. You could read this book." And like, I looked at it and I was like, "Dude, I'm not going to be able to parse through Terrence McKenna. I'm just not. Like, the print is too small. Thank you for appreciating that I am the same genre at my core, but he's like 190 IQ and he's organized, man. His writing is something I can't follow. They're like, just open it. So I opened it and then I saw it was an autism book and I was like, oh. At least that's what they called it. I don't think that he wrote it for people with autism or whatever, but like, you have to take yourself seriously. The notion that understanding the universe is your responsibility, because the only understanding of the universe that will be useful to you is your own understanding. I like that one a lot, actually, and I actually take that to heart. That's why someone gave me this book, is because they know that is really at the core of my soul what I'm doing. Like, I'm trying to understand the universe. I'm trying to understand my society. I'm trying to understand like everything that I can to the extent that I can. And like, there are some things that are just like restricted access information. Like, I get that. There's some things that I just am inadequate with. Like, I can't understand how to explain to you what temperature that is going to need to boil mercury versus when mercury will turn back into a liquid. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Any more than I know how to run a Fortune 500 company. But what I do know is that, like, I understand that there are doors of perception. There's a book by that title. That's why I use that term. And the doors of perception, when opened, allows you into this realm that, like, people will tell you it exists, and you can choose to go visit it or not. Or you can choose to be like, that's a myth. That doesn't exist. I would rather go watch Megan Fox in Transformers than take psychedelic mushrooms. I'm not saying that's the paradigm choice, but you get what I'm trying to illustrate here, I think. Right? You could go cocksucking. Well, I shouldn't use cocksucking derogatory. You could go bootlicking. That's what I was looking for, not cocksucking. You could go bootlicking, right? And worship military cock. You could do that. Or you could go worship the mushroom. You don't actually have to worship. You kind of do have to worship the military. You kind of have to. But you don't have to worship the mushroom, but you can show it respect instead of disrespect, because the bootlicking, almost to exclusion and with persecutory, punitive, like, they will punish you for it. You are not allowed to open those doors of perception. You are simply not allowed. They'll ask you before they even give you like security clearance whether or not you've ever done drugs, right? Like, why is that? Is it to just test your obedience? Is it like, oh, well, you broke the rules? Nah, it's not like that, because it's like, have you ever raped a woman? Like, did they ask you that? Like, are you really going to be like, oh yeah, yeah, back in the day, me and my brother and my friends did, right? Like, no. But are you going to tell them that you tried DMT? Are they going to let you in an NSA building if you've tried DMT? Probably. They probably don't really care that much. But if they allowed it to facilitate itself, the outcome may not be completely self-evident, but there's a reason they outlawed specifically LSD, right? Like, what would that drug have done if not suppressed? What would those gates of perception have revealed that was so antithetical to the system that had to quash that thing's existence, like a bug? Right? Like, I don't know. I know Terrence McKenna probably thought about it. I don't know how much he thought about it, but one of his thoughts was more coherent and layered than any of my thoughts put together for a year, it seems. It's clearly a crisis of two things, of consciousness and conditioning. We have the technological power, the engineering skills to save our planet, to cure disease, to feed the hungry, to end war. But we lack the intellectual vision, the ability to change our minds. We must decondition ourselves from 10,000 years of bad behavior, and it's not easy. This is what I believe. that we are not pushed from behind by the casual unfolding of historical necessity, but that we are in the grip of an attractor of some sort, which lies ahead of us in time. I really believe that. Seriously. And when I read that he also believed that, it was like the first time I'd ever heard anyone intellectual ever put forth that idea. That, like, space and time is relative, right? But what's to say which way is which in time? And what's to say that we could measure if there was a reverse type of flow? Because it'd be pulling us towards something, and it'd be an attractor. And as a child, I used to speak about this constantly. I don't know where I picked up the idea, probably from, like, the Nova History Channel, like Smithsonian. Wherever I was watching and learning and gathering these ideas, I took it very spiritually, because I took it as, like, a belief in faith, because people were teaching me to pray to the Israeli blood god. I mean, they were really pushing this idea that if you thought about things hard enough, you could manifest them. And I mean, it was I learned immediately that is not the way that the universe works. I did not, in fact, have psychic powers, and that God had never saved anyone, and there was actually only evidence to suggest that the people that were wasting their time indoctrinating others, even as a child, I knew this, were predatory, and were doing it for ethnic reasons that had very little to do with the religious component to it. And I also knew that because they were kind of telling me that. It was a private Jewish school. And so here, first of all, let me show you why that I do that annoying voice, so that you don't think that I'm making fun of people with disabilities. Quite the opposite. Because it isn't to mock. It's actually...
so normally between...
If you were wondering what that brief soundbite you heard there, it was the grand finals of StarCraft from, like,
I'm not very keen on the whole abduction shtick. I think
this is Terrence McKenna from, like, 1994.
One of the symptoms of cultural disintegration is simply that people lose the ability to distinguish between dream and memory. And that somehow one's past, one's real past and one's dream past, simply become one's past. And then, under certain circumstances, you know, what was basically dream material is presented as reality. You know, just because you have a nut theory, it doesn't mean that you agree with other nut theories. In fact, it often makes you very hostile to them. After all, there's a limited pool there that we're all... My idea with psychedelics, throughout my whole career with them, was that the purpose was to go out into mind space and hunt ideas and bring something back to show the folks around the campfire, something that would astonish and amaze us all. Well, you know, it's a narrow keyhole, the mind. You can't bring back a flower like the time traveler does in Wells' story. But so I found the only thing I could bring back, not being graphically endowed, was ideas. It's a very mysterious business, the revelation of to mind of the world. Since the last time I talked to any audience, I finally understood an argument of my enemies that I had never understood before. Enemies in the friendly, collegial, ideological sense. In other words, enemies. The countervailing theory to the evolution of consciousness, how it came to be so rapidly, as opposed to the idea that it was stimulated by psychedelic compounds in the early human diet, was, and I've ridiculed this idea to you before, the idea that human beings throw things. And because we were small and weak and we hunted very large animals, we learned to hurl rocks with great accuracy. And that this is a behavior not observed in the animal world. I mean, monkeys hurl feces in a generally downward direction to indicate displeasure, but their aim is lousy, which is a very fortunate thing if you're an Amazon explorer. But human beings can hit with considerable force an object up to 120 feet away. And evolutionary biologists have fastened on this as requiring so much coordination of neural material that there would be enough left over to invent Western civilization and explore the planets once you had this thing down. Well, it always seemed somewhat preposterous to me, and I pointed out that it would make the big league baseball pitcher the paradigm of evolutionary accomplishment in the human world if that standard were accepted. But now I understand the argument a little better, and it's slightly deeper than I thought, because here's what they were trying to say the first time. It isn't this neural coordination which is going on is really about planning. That it is an extraordinary thing to look at a rock in your hand and to make the calculation into the forward vector of the future. Aha, if I hurl back and impart a certain energy in a certain direction with a certain intensity, this thing will follow a path through space and will land somewhere with benign consequences to me and my side. And it's the key concept in here is plan. This is a plan. And animals don't do this. There are no plans in the animal world. Their consciousness is of the moment and doesn't involve this complex triangulation out of the moment toward future consequences in quite this way. Because you see, what happens when you let go of the rock is that you can no longer control it. It isn't like hunting or beating something to death with a stick where the strategy is being readjusted moment to moment. No, once the projectile is released from your hand, that's all the planning you get to do. So it represents a concrescence of intent. And this building toward a concrescence of intent, this plan making, then is the tiny flutter of the butterfly's wing that ripples out through the chaotic universe, and the next thing you know, the kings of Babylon are issuing their codes of law, and slaves under the lash are erecting cities, and, the stars are being brought into a mathematical model, so forth and so on. Well, I just wanted to mention that. I'm also working on a second book at the moment where we're going to go back into the psilocybin theory of the origin of consciousness and actually attempt to make a case that will demand attack. In other words, basically, to actually marshal all of the anatomical, paleontological, primate data, because the more we research, the more it appears true that by looking at the psychedelics, in fact, they become a kind of key to understanding the entire phenomenon of human emergence by looking at
that theory entirely. I actually think I disagree with it, but I think it's definitely a really interesting thought. Like, does our consciousness have at least a connection to the development of our consciousness because of the psychedelic substance that was exterior to our brain and not endogenous? Like, if we didn't have, 5-MeO-DMT or whatever it is that comes out of, I don't know, I'm not an ethnobotanist like Terence McKenna, but, he's written the books as far as I know. There's an entire thing, I think it may be called Fruit of the Gods. That may be what he's talking about, but I could have my timeline way off. I don't know when this talk was given, so I just kind of put one on at random, and a lot of them are not accurately labeled because people steal them from each other just like I do, and no one really knows. Yeah, it just says that Terence McKenna was a UFOologist, and he was eloquent and informative with a touch of humor. That's all it says. So, and most of his talks are like that because they were recorded, um, on a device that was like an old tape recorder, right? And I think some of those did maybe raise the pitch of his voice. I'm guessing, but you see what I mean when I read the way that he does. And sometimes his talk is very different. Like here, I'll fast forward and I'll see if I can find, because he has like multiple different mannerisms, because depending on whatever mood he's in or what drugs.
Can serve as a kind of a carrier frequency to bind these cortical resonances, basically.
NASA dedicated an expedition, one of their aircraft, to looking at this, and they got thousands of images of these things, and it's an electrical phenomenon theory doesn't account for, and nobody knows what it means. I'm on one level, I'm sympathetic to Persinger and that approach to explaining some of these things, and I do think the place has been overlooked in importance. On another level, this is a very hard thing to talk about, but there is like what I call linguistic viruses, which infect the effort to communicate. And they're very hard to catch at work. So, and it has to do with how can people believe things which are absurd. And it's very interesting to spend time with people who believe that things are something which is absurd. And a lot of people bring raps to me that they want confirmation or disconfirmation on. And, I passed this way last night when I talked about the rules of evidence. The standard of discourse has decayed to the point where it's very hard to get any kind of consensus about anything, because most people participating don't know how the game is played. And linguistic viruses really are responsible for much more of reality than we suppose. I suppose I can't really talk about this without stepping on somebody's toes. So let me pick, for example, crop circles. Crop circles are important, and what was going on at the England end was these things were absurd. I mean, you had only to see one to understand what was going on, and to see that a confluence of British eccentricity, ripe grain, a certain ambiance in the air was allowing these things to come into being, and then the media was fanning it into existence. Well, now, how does this work? Talking of coupled oscillators and Persinger and all that. Pardon me?
Talking about UFOs.
Oh, that the paranormal phenomenon has an impact in an inverse square relationship to the distance you are from the event. You see? Because here's how it works. The media is reporting the onrushing phenomenon of existence. Stock markets, wars, diplomatic meetings, gangster killings, so forth and so on. Then something weird happens. Now, I have a job, you have a job. We note that something weird has happened. But it doesn't affect us. But scattered through the society, there are people who, when they open their paper and say, strange pattern in Wheatfield near Wiltshire, they look and say, aha, I knew it. This is what we've been waiting for. This is the sign. And they jump in their car and they drive to Wiltshire to look at the crop circle. And they get there first. Well, then comes the press. And they say, well, what is this? Say, well, the farmer doesn't know, and everybody's standing around. And finally, the weird person takes courage and says, well, actually, I've been studying a peculiar form of biological energy for some 30 years, and my theory, and you're off and running at that point. And so weirdness attracts weirdos, who then interpret the weirdness very weirdly, because they came with sharpened axes to grind, you see.
That's Terrence McKenna. He was a wise dude. And, he used to talk to a lot of different types of people. I think now I'm going to take a break, and we'll be back next time. Thanks for joining.